Hello and welcome to Give and Toke, the show that elevates the conversation about cannabis to a higher level. I'm your host, Paul O'Donoghue, and my guest today is Justin Lee, founder of Ay Papi, a California-based craft cannabis company focused on solventless, single-origin products made in collaboration with regenerative legacy cultivators. Justin's path into cannabis wasn't trend-driven. It came through injury, chronic pain, concussion recovery, and a decision to think more deeply about what he was putting into his body, not just as medicine, but as a lifestyle choice. Justin Lee, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Paul. That was a great introduction. You did your research. Wow. Maybe more than anyone I've spoken to. That was great.
I do pride myself on my research, but you are a particularly highly sought after guest of mine for multiple reasons. Obviously, your cannabis pursuits, but also some pop culture in there, which I'm sure we'll touch on. But firstly, I do want to say that I discovered your work last year after your appearance on Planted with Sarah Pyan. Shout out to Sarah, friend of the show. And I must start by asking a follow-up question from that show. Have you eaten any family meals at Del Taco recently?
No, it's been a while since I've done Del Taco. Taco Bell, Del Taco. I reminisce about the family meal, but that's not so much a part of my diet. The older I get, I got to be like even more careful about what I'm eating. But man, was it good to be young and just eat whatever you want and eat all the ice cream you want. I can't even eat ice cream like I used to. That was my favorite dessert.
Yeah. I'm in my mid-30s now, and got to take lactose-free milk and things like that. We get older, our bodies fail us, so we've got to be mindful of that. And for the listener that doesn't know what we're talking about, that was Justin's experience of first consuming cannabis and then just eating Del Taco, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, ice cream, just going to town.
Oh yeah, there might have been cereal in there too.
That's right.
Just more sugar.
Now, while you came onto my cannabis radar only last year, you were on my TV screen much earlier than that. I am going to rip the Band-Aid off now and acknowledge your role as Annyong on the cultural icon that is Arrested Development, a show that I still quote almost every day in my life. If you don't mind humoring me, what was your takeaway from your time on that show?
Oh, that is a good and a tough question, just because there are so many takeaways from that show, and which direction do you want to go? And I still take things away from that show to this day. Whereas like I was so young when I was on it, right? So I was kind of growing up on that show. But there are things where as you get older and you have more life experience, you can actually go back and compare. Oh, wow, I took quite a bit from this, and this I learned quite a bit here and there, because essentially you're working on a professional set, which is a professional work environment, and at the highest level with just superstars. So like as a kid to go in there, like you're kind of thrown into an all-star team lineup. It's like I always say, like if you're an athlete and like you get the opportunity to see what the pros practice and play, like that's probably extremely valuable, and it seems more attainable because you can see how they systematically break it down and get things done. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that I took away from that show is we shouldn't limit the goals that we put in our life. And I was very lucky and very grateful to have an opportunity to work on that show. There was a lot of hard work and manifestation that went into it, but I understand that luck was a huge part, which is why I'm so grateful. And at that young age, it was important because a lot of people, if they have dreams of working on TV, like that's the pinnacle, that's the ending. And for me, it was like I didn't even really understand fame or any of that at that age. I just like acting, and they have really good food, and it's fun doing this make believe pretend stuff, which is what kids do, and you get paid. So I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But for me, it was like realizing, again, as you get older, these goals are sometimes the pinnacle for some people, and understanding that it was attainable and achievable at a young age. I think that helped me to always have goals that I want to hit, but understanding that it's okay if you don't hit every goal, because the journey is what's worth it, right? It's the process and what you learn from that. And so that's what I learned at a young age. It's like the cliche way of basically not saying like, oh, follow your dreams, or you can do anything, right? It's all possible, really. But me, just personally, I draw a lot of confidence from that. If I set some goals that I feel like seem outlandish or unachievable, it's things from our past that we can draw on. We're like, well, that seems kind of outlandish to achieve and ask for as well. And again, having humility and understanding you can work your hardest and not get something because luck is a part of it doesn't make it worth not trying, right?
That's really lovely. And off air, I kind of double checked that it was okay for us to talk about this because, it was a really interesting character. You were on probably about half a dozen episodes over the run of the show. You had limited dialogue for a significant period of time there, but it was such an important character to the story arc. You ultimately ended up as one of the villains of the Bluth family. And I just absolutely love that. Your character was completely underestimated. And then there you were actually just, quietly observing everything, seeing everything that was going on. So I just adore the character. And, while it is a part character, you played such an important role. So it's really awesome to be talking to you today.
Thank you so much. And I honestly, I don't know if that was like, because the writers and the creators were so brilliant. I don't know if that was their intention the whole time, which would have been brilliant, or I also don't put it past them that they just decided to do this on a whim and they're that creative and brilliant. And I think it's the latter because we knew the season was ending and on season 3 the show was over. We didn't even get the full season run, so we knew this was it. And Jessica Walter, who plays Lucille Bluth, she really went to bat for me, and she pulled me aside and let me know. She's like, yeah, I told them like we cannot do this final season without having Annyong back here. So yeah, it's just phenomenal, and rest in peace to her. But
Indeed.
yeah, just like a wonderful experience.
Thank you. Well, thank you for sharing that. We will touch very briefly on the Annyong character later on in the show, but we are here to talk about cannabis today. One other thing that was mentioned in Sarah's podcast was a cannabis activation you did for the Abbott Elementary wrap party. I think while we're talking about entertainment, I'm really interested in kind of how that came to be.
Yeah, so I mean, we had an opportunity. Essentially, they were having a wrap party and they were interested in having some type of a cannabis bar. It was a private event, so the regulations are less strict in that sense. So it was compliant, but also we wanted to make sure we're following compliance. So we decided let's not set up outside. It's cold at night and no one really wants to be out there. It kind of feels like we're shunned. Let's set up next to the bar, meaning we're not going to do any smokables at this event. We're just going to focus on the gummies and the edibles because it's a lower barrier of entry. It's a little less intimidating for some people. And then for us, we actually cut them into quarter-sized doses. So one of our gummies is 10 milligrams, but we just cut them into quarter pieces, 2.5. That way we're like, the whole point of the experience was this isn't to get you high. This is to open your eyes on sensory profile, flavors, and experience. And if you want to eat more, there's plenty here. So you can always come back and consume
You can
more.
always go up, not down.
Yeah, let's just wait it out. And some people are more experienced than others. And so they're coming taking like 4 toothpicks at once, like, but I think the coolest thing about that was we brought our gummies that we don't add any flavor to. They're just flavored by the rosin. And so when we have the guests try the gummies, we basically do an experiment with them where we ask them to try to guess the flavor. We play a game with them and they go through a gamut of flavors, like all different types of fruity flavors, floral flavors, candy flavors. And then what we tell them is the name of the strain or the cultivar that we're using for that particular SKU. And we open the jar of rosin so that they could smell it and they go, oh my gosh, that is exactly what I'm tasting. What is that? It's like that is the only flavor input in there. If we don't put that concentrate, that solventless rosin in there, you're getting no flavor out of that gummy. And it just blows people's minds because they're thinking like, okay, well, how do I eat this now? Like, where can I try this flavor somewhere else? And I think that's the point, right? Where there's a lot of flavors that the culinary world is missing out on, a lot of combinations. And so it's really exciting.
Well, we're going to take it back a little bit and talk about how you entered the cannabis space. You've spoken openly about injuries from MMA, being prescribed opioids at a young age, and later dealing with concussion symptoms and chronic pain. What was the moment where cannabis shifted from recreational curiosity to something more intentional in your life?
I want to say I was probably like 20 at that time. And it just the pain pills weren't working. They were just taking a toll. And then for me, it was more the neurological damage, the concussions. And there was a moment where I just really couldn't get out of bed for like a week. Like my hands were numb, my feet were numb and tingling. Um, I had like double plantar fasciitis on both my feet. So like I would have to crawl to the shower and just run a hot shower and just kind of get like my body warmed up to start moving. And there was a lot of light sensitivity too, which is very odd. So I kept everything super dark. I had to put a piece of tape over the smoke alarm because even that light would just cause like a piercing headache. And I think that was the moment was I was going to the doctors and they were just blaming it on like, oh, it's concussions and it's the sport you did. You know, you shouldn't be doing MMA. Mind you, this is not when this was a mainstream sport. I was doing this when it was very frowned upon. It was pretty much illegal, and we would have to go fight on Indian reservations or go out of the country to like Mexico to Tijuana. And so this was like not like, and there was a time where they were like trying to make a bill to make it illegal, and they were calling it human cockfighting, which is crazy how fast the sport has grown now and how mainstream it's become. But that's not how it was looked at. Like when I told my agents, like, hey, I'm doing MMA, let me put that on my resume for special skills. Like, don't do that. They're gonna think you're crazy and like you're antisocial, like you're not fit for set. Can you just say you do these martial arts and separate them? It's like, okay, yeah, wrestling, jujitsu, kickboxing, taekwondo, sure. But it was very interesting because now they're making movies and all these things out of it. Now they're hiring all these fighters for stunt choreography, which is great because they should be the ones doing it. But it's very, very interesting. And that was the time where I was like, okay, well, the doctors can't really help me. They're trying to just give me more pills. And they're saying I just got to rest and wait it out. And so I just started doing a lot of my own research and seeing like what is there that I can control? Like what out of this can I control? And let's just start there. I think the most important thing was just stopping the pills right away. Like let me just stop that. So how am I going to deal with the pain management and this and that and there's mood irritability and impulse issues that come into play as well when you have like severe concussions. And so your brain needs time to repair, and that can take some time. And for me, in the meantime, I was like, well, I'm going to use cannabis then instead. Like every time I feel like, oh, that this will be the moment that I'm going to take a pill, I substituted, which some might call risk mitigation. I call it save my life. So it's maybe it helped with some of the withdrawal effects as well, because the withdrawal effects, and that's how I knew this stuff was bad for me was, I mean, the first day or two is really rough. Stopping the opioids, it's basically heroin, right? So it's really rough. You're not getting really good sleep. You're sweating all over the place. Your pain signals and your neurons are just going haywire. But I found whenever I smoked cannabis or consumed cannabis, it just brought immediate relief to where it's like it didn't take it all away the way a painkiller would mask it, which is why you don't heal as quickly when you're on painkillers. You need the pain signal so your body knows to send the cells to heal. And so in my mind, I'm like, well, I'm still feeling the pain, but it's manageable. So like, and so, and I look to that as maybe that was like the start of my body being able to heal. My body's telling me like, hey, this is hurting. We need to start sending healing cells this way. And then I started looking into food. That's another thing that I can control, and diet. And at that time, I was eating a lot of Jack in the Box and fast food. And my thing is like, I'm burning like 8,000 calories a day. I can eat whatever I want, which is true to a certain degree. But I think all the variables came into play with the concussions. It's like you can't have a bad diet with those concussions because your brain's not healed to heal you. We didn't have the proper understanding of training. And so we would just go all day, every day and just spar. And if you had a headache, like we didn't know what a concussion was. Like, oh, I'm a little, my head hurts today, but I'll be good tomorrow. And those things are what add up, the subconcussive hits. And it's really not giving your brain time in between to rest and heal. So that's why fighters now, they try not to take as many fights in between so they can have that time to heal. And that was it. And really cannabis like was the biggest part of helping me start to look at things more holistically. I was like, well, this is not a chemical. This is a plant. I know how this was grown. And from there, I went to a surgeon because I had two bilateral labrum tears in my shoulders. And so I went to two surgeons and they were like, you're going to need to do surgery. And one was like, you need to do surgery. And then when you're done, you can do this one. And then the other doctor was like, yeah, you just want to save time. You should do this one. And 2 weeks later, do the other one. I was like, what are these people talking about? So I went to a third doctor, a surgeon, orthopedic surgeon. He's like, how much pain are you in? I was like, I mean, it hurts every day. He's like, is it manageable? Like, how long can you hold out? I was like, I don't know. Like, I guess it's manageable. I just, like pain tolerance wasn't really a thing for me. It was more the concern, like if there's pain, maybe I should be fixing it.
Yeah, what's wrong? Yeah.
Yeah, right. And what he told me is like, look, medical technology is advancing rapidly. Like if you can hold off, you're still young. If you can hold off for as long as you can, there might be alternative solutions. And that's what opened my eyes to regenerative medicine and stem cells, and going through a rabbit hole of dissecting stem cells, because understanding there's misinformation around that actually takes away from the validity of stem cells. Just like anything, there are people that are going to take that buzzword and do bad with it, and people that do it the right way. And I was very lucky to come across phenomenal doctors, a network of surgeons that were working around the world, bringing quadriplegics back to walking. It was incredible. And for me, this felt like natural. Like I'm procuring the stem cells from my own body. It's me.
Yeah.
It's,
Wow.
it's me healing me. Like I can't think of anything more natural than that. And then that really like gave me a new lease on life. Like it hyper sped everything. That along with the diet, and that opened my mind to biohacking and wellness. And it's probably a combination, because I started taking these nutraceuticals, doing these IVs, doing this and that, and doing it all at once. Light therapy, cryo, everything, you name it, dry sauna. I just invested everything into it. I probably spent like, now we're not going to talk about that, but if people, some people have asked and they're like, why would you do that? But for me, it was like, I can't look at it that way, because if I'm hurting, I'm not even going to be able to make as much as I can, or put out the output I can. But if I'm healthy and I believe in my ability when I'm healthy, then I'll be able to maximize output, and it'll take care of all this.
Hell yeah.
And because I had that second lease of life, that was really pertinent. I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to ruin this. I'm going to make sure I'm eating clean and researching what I'm eating, researching everything I put into my body, whatever prescriptions that doctor is giving to me. 80% of the time I don't take them anymore. It's just like, I don't need it. I'll see if I need it or not. And oftentimes I don't. And with concussions, like neurology is so new, they don't really have a mainstream like protocol for it. You're basically doing off-brand use medication, meaning like that wasn't the intended use. So a lot of it was like, I went to a sports clinic in at UCLA, and it was actually a clinic you had to get accepted into. And they were saying like they wanted to give me like off-brand use antidepressants and then melatonin to help with the concussions, and just wasn't comfortable with that. This was before I went and did the stem cells, and I just wasn't comfortable with that, and it didn't feel like they were confident. To me, that sounded like, so you don't have an on-brand use
Yeah.
or a treatment or something, like, okay.
I will just give
And
this a
mind you,
go
this was
then.
a while back. Yeah. And I think they've there's a lot more options now with regards to like hyperbaric chamber and things like that. And those were the things that I was doing. This was years and years ago. So now they're starting to use some of those treatments as well for concussions. But it was fascinating, and that opened my eyes to like, okay, well, if I'm trying to eat clean, then I have to make sure the cannabis that I'm putting into my body is just as clean. And that kind of brought the connotation. I was like, oh, they're all just agriculture and plants. If I care about what I'm eating is organic, then what I'm smoking and consuming here should also be organic. And then that just opened up a whole can of worms of what is actually organic. And now we have regenerative organic, because there's loopholes to organic.
That's super cool, man. I'm going to coin a phrase here. I think you're the LeBron James of cannabis because of the way you take care of yourself and the investment you put into your body and your health. He spends $1 million a year keeping himself healthy. And, I think that you probably not spending that much, but it's a great investment there.
If I had the means to, I would. I mean, you probably feel real good with $1 million of
I
treatment. My
reckon.
goodness.
I always think that, like, my favorite people in cannabis are the people who who resonate with me the most, are the people that have a deeply personal connection. When I first started this, it was like, oh, you have to use cannabis to be part of this industry. No, I don't believe that anymore, but I think you have to believe in it and have a personal reason. You have a deeply personal reason here, and you've done a great job of exploring that. How did those personal discoveries lead to the development of Ay Papi?
Um, for me, it was, well, there's a two-part to this, and one of it is kind of comedic. Um, One is, I've always been very passionate about cannabis. I was working in the industry during the Prop 215 days, but it was just really sketchy during that time. This was before legalization. So in California, when we had medicinal cannabis available, but it was just kind of the wild west, and so I stepped away. I couldn't take that risk of getting in trouble with career in entertainment and whatnot. Unfortunately, cannabis at that time was frowned upon too, especially when you're a young actor.
Right.
And you can go for some of these young shows, like there's advertisers and things involved, so they don't really want that kind of stuff publicized, right? Unless they're very much an adult and that's your brand now. Yeah, and so like that, I stepped away, right? And then once legalization happened, that's when I was like, okay, I think I can kind of dip my toes in this again because I'm very passionate about this. And then I had an opportunity to work with a company called Cannabis, who was using Ayurvedic recipes blended with different ratios of cannabinoids, tinctures, essentially. So it was like you had a 3-to-1 CBD to THC with like black pepper, turmeric, and cloves. That recipe has been shown to be really great for inflammation. It's always been anecdotal in Ayurvedic studies, but now we've done like peer-reviewed journals and double-blind placebo studies that actually show like, okay, the reason why these things help is because they create an entourage effect with each other, similar to how cannabinoids do. So I was fascinated by that, and I just wanted some as well. So I started off with just helping this brand and promoting them, and eventually I joined the Ganjier program. And through the Ganjier program, I was able to link with just some amazing farms. And at that time, that's a little bit before that was when earlier that year was when I decided that I wanted to actually have a company of my own. And so I consume a lot of solventless concentrates, which is considered the premium category. So when you go into the store, it's like the most expensive item. And also, like, there wasn't as much transparency then. And I was really keen on wanting to consume things that are regenerative, organic, and not feeding the plants with some certain nutrients or certain salts and things like that that require it to be flushed because it's just not safe for us to consume. And so that's really what started the avenue of like, okay, well, I kind of want to make my own medicine essentially. And this way I know how it's sourced, how it's made. And then the two part to that was I was just spending so much money in stores on rosin, and my CPA just yelled at me. I was like, what are you doing? And when you pay someone for professional services and they yell at you, I guess you're supposed to listen to them. And he's like, why don't you just start a business or something? Like, it can't be worse than this. Like, at least make something of it. Like,
Yeah.
because right now you're just earning money and just giving it. And then, like, this is not a write off. Like, what are you doing?
That's great financial advice. I'd love this accountant.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I was like, wow, I feel thoroughly reamed and kind of embarrassed and ashamed and kind of making me feel like I have a problem. But okay, let's see what we can make happen with this. And that's where Ay Papi came in.
Ay Papi describes itself as a craft brand. This word gets thrown around a lot. In Australia, we have a very immature juvenile market. We had medicinal legalization from 2016, so we're approaching 10 years. But I wouldn't say the industry really took off till about 21, 22. This is a word now that's very much a marketing term in Australia, but I'd love to know what that word means to you.
So when we think of craft, I always think the opposite side of that is commercial, right? Or we could say craft versus scale. I think both need to scale, but they face different challenges in how to scale. I think the difference is craft, our responsibility is to innovate, to push the boundaries of what is possible, to constantly bring something better to the table, because that's the only way that commercial will start to pay attention. I mean, you see it all the time, these companies that eventually make a big splash and then sell. We see it with like grass fed now. That before you couldn't find grass fed beef or organic as much. Now you're seeing that even the bigger players and the major chain grocery stores at least have a section for organic. And I think that's the responsibility of craft. Craft is what drives the consumer to want better, and the consumer's dollars is what dictates everything. If they want better and they don't want to spend money on anything worse now, because now awareness is there, and it takes a long time, but we're making baby steps. Again, I think more people eat organic now than ever before or are aware of it. There's more availability now than when I was a kid. And Yeah, I think that's it. And that's how we incrementally increase the standard of what's available for the consumer. And that's the responsibility of craft versus commercial. So we'll say commercial's job is to get it to the masses, to the mainstream. Just copy us. Copy us 2, 3 years later when you don't feel like it's a big risk. Take the credit, sure, use all your marketing power and dollars, but the mission, you're just still helping us, right? We're getting better quality products to the consumer. And that's what the consumer deserves. The consumer deserves to know what they're putting in their body.
I like that you seem to see a symbiotic relationship there between kind of corporate and craft or commercial and craft because, I think here in Australia, we're still very much at the either or phase and it's a bit combative. So it's actually really nice to hear that, there is some synergy there that they kind of need each other.
Yeah, we do, and it's just different goals, right? And that's okay as long as we understand what the intentions are, then we can figure out where we align. But a commercial brand is going to want to make as much margin and profit as possible, and they're going to scale as quickly as possible. And they may not have the same challenges that we do, but that doesn't mean craft can't scale. Craft can certainly scale. We just have to be more genuine about it and make sure that it matches our brand guidelines and our ethos. And so, for example, like if you look at a commercial brand, and you ask them, the numbers guy, like, hey, what makes a good hash strain? They're almost always going to go to yield. It's like, oh, whatever gives me the most so that I can sell more to make the most money. And in my opinion, yield is really important, but it doesn't dictate the quality of the cultivar or how good it's going to smoke or be. And there's a lot of amazing cultivars out there that don't yield high that we decide to bite the bullet on and bite the margin on just because we think there's a place for it and there's some value there in the market for people to try something new. And yeah, it just slows down the process a little bit, but it makes it more intentional and it's absolutely still possible to scale with craft.
Justin, I absolutely love these conversations because I get bogged down very much in our medicinal system, and when I speak consistently to Australian guests, we're dancing around regulations, we're dancing around the fun that cannabis can be. So I really appreciate kind of the love and passion in a conversation like this. And this is why I still, while it's an Australian show, love to get outside perspectives because this is where we want to head. We're 20, 30 years behind California, I think, emotionally and psychologically. But this is where we're aspiring to. What I want to talk about now is the inputs because we've alluded to these already. You work exclusively with regeneratively farmed material. For listeners who hear the word organic all the time, what do these words mean? What's organic? What's regenerative?
I mean, I'm probably not even the best person to ask this, but essentially, I mean, look, organic should just be what organic means, that it's from the earth. It's not using any chemicals or harmful additives, but now there are things called like organic salts, which is still like a chemical, and you're getting away with, or now they have like fruits and vegetables that they say are organically grown, but they're grown indoor. And from my understanding, like organic is it has to be a part of the land, like it has to be rooted to the earth. And so that doesn't mean that they're not making clean hydroponic or indoor crops. Like you absolutely can, like living soil, right? But in my opinion, I think the term organic has become muddied, and that's why they now need to have a new term, which is regenerative organic, because organic should just be regenerative. I think that's the point of organic, right? But because there's these like loopholes now or misunderstandings, we have the term regenerative organic, and that's like feeding into the land, feeding into the soil. It's the only type of cultivation method that actually strengthens our earth and reduces the carbon emissions of our planet. And so like if we were able to do, instead of this like mass crop fielding that we do, and we switched everything to regenerative organic grow, which is possible, it's still possible to do that at scale and to feed. And if I'm misspeaking, then I'd love to be educated from someone, and that's not sarcasm. But that would solve so many of our environmental issues and our environmental problems. I think cannabis cultivators are actually kind of the pioneers with regards to regenerative farming and what they've been able to accomplish. It's pretty phenomenal, right? So the concept is like a lot of grows are going to be feeding the plant, trying to figure out what nutrients to give it. But instead, the concept of regenerative organic is we're feeding the land, feeding the soil. And this is like really where the farms, like they know the land, they've been there. These legacy growers, like they know what compost to put in. They all have their own recipes and their own secrets and their own secret tea. But it's like you want that biomicrobiome, you want that clean soil that when you open it and look, there's so many life forms in there. There's some farms that we work with that don't till at all. And that can be a challenge in the first harvest. But if it goes well year after year, that land is just going to get stronger and stronger and stronger. And, I have to give a big shout out to some of the farms we work with, like Mattole Valley Sungrown and Whitethorn Valley Farm, and Bryceland Forest Farms. I mean, these farms are, when I go there, just to see them living that regenerative organic lifestyle. I feel like these farmers are more equipped and more qualified to speak on it than I am. I'm just grateful to be there and to learn from them. And I see the intention that they put to be able to see these plants in the ground. They look like the happiest, hardiest, strongest plants, soaking up the sun in an amazing terroir in Appalachian, like the Emerald Triangle. It's phenomenal. And I think that's why we've been able to win like the state fair with Mattole Valley Sungrown, with his sour diesel, which we call the Sour Papi, and then with the Z from Canyon Creek Farms so we have a state fair over in California, and it's the actual state fair. And so they've always had like craft competitions there, I think, with like wine, cheeses, and things like that. And they decided to add cannabis a few years ago. And so this past year, like, they did not shun us. We were smack dab in the middle with one of the biggest installations and build outs, like center stage. It was phenomenal. But they do an award called the Golden Bear, which is the best in category. So they give golds to like solventless concentrates and solvent concentrates, and then they pick like the best out of the entire category. And we were really fortunate to win a Golden Bear for the Sour Z from Mattole Valley Sungrown and Canyon Creek Family Farms. And yeah, and then also with our edibles, we were able to get a Golden Bear as well. So best in category edibles in all of California and concentrates.
So in mentioning rosin, you focus exclusively on solventless concentrates. There's a bit of an arms race in cannabis concentrates, stronger, louder, more extreme. Tell us about your process and what solventless preserves that other methods might not.
Yeah, so we make solventless live rosin. So live rosin is different from cured rosin in that cured rosin is working with the cured flower. For us, we work with fresh frozen flower. So essentially, just before harvest time, when the flowers are in full bloom, we'll harvest them, then chop them up, and then basically freeze them right away. And I think what this does, it preserves a different profile and experience of the plant, where when the bud cures, it goes through like an evolution, which is kind of different from what it smells like when it's in the ground in full bloom. And it's still beautiful. It's phenomenal. It's really great to see that like transformation happen. But it's also really cool to be able to capture what the plant smells like in ground in full bloom. And I think a lot of people don't get the opportunity to walk a field just towering over you with cannabis and what that smells like. And for me, I think it's what makes it such a sensory experience is that people are tasting what it smells like to stroll through that field of cannabis. They're getting an opportunity to taste what that plant smells like in full bloom. And it's great. Like, you get to capture those terpene profiles. I also prefer solventless, just because with solvents, you're using different petrochemicals or things that also need to be pulled out of it, like essentially cleaned out of it. There's a specific term for that, but I'm not in solvent, so it's okay. But with solventless, we're just using ice and water to basically transport as a vessel, just take the trichomes and preserve those heads. And essentially, so we're taking the fresh rosin, we put it in, we wash it in ice and water, we spin it out, and then essentially we're pulling these bags out. And at the bottom of the bags, you just see all the trichome heads collected, and it looks like sandy, like kind of like wet sand is what it looks like. And that's basically all the matured trichome heads. And when it's done properly, you're basically preserving those heads. And if you look them under a scope, like, they're just full circles. They're not damaged or anything like that. And to me, that's the cleanest experience of cannabis and the purest experience of cannabis. There's no chemicals that go into it. And from there, we press the the ice water hash is what we call it, what we collect. And we press that on kind of like a t-shirt press, but I think two hot plates, one on the top and the bottom. And you press that and all this rosin starts to come out. And that to me is like when you get to smell that, it's like you took the crop, the entire field, and just shoved it up your nose. And it is so loud, so loud, so aromatic. The intensity aroma is phenomenal. And it's just, I think aroma wise, it provides a more pleasant experience in the sense that like when you smoke flower, you're burning something. And it's just like that resin, that smell just kind of sticks with you longer. It's hard to be in certain settings and be smelling like that. But we have a lot of people that consume our rosin, and their partners aren't necessarily cannabis consumers, and they don't necessarily like the smell. But when they dab the rosin and it airs out a little, one, it airs out a lot quicker because it's more like vapor rather than combustion. And we get it time and time again. Oh, my wife or my husband just came in and they said, "What candle did you light? It smells lovely." And they'll open the jar and throw it in their nose, like, "Oh my gosh, that's what it smells like." And then they're saying is, "That's what weed smells
Yeah,
like
what an
now."
endorsement.
And it's like that's the point, right? Is we all have, and some of us have this one or two experience, and that's just what they attribute cannabis to. And that's what we want to do with Ay Papi, is showcase cannabis in a totally different light, and different aromas. And that's what we want. We want that aha moment. That's the what we do. When we were going from the why, the how, and the what, that's the what we do. Is we want to provide a product that's a sensory profile experience that makes someone go, "Holy shit, that's different." What is that? It's that aha moment. That's what we're trying to capture.
Well, I want to talk flavor on that note because your, award-winning gummies don't mask a cannabis taste. Like our market's full of distillate-based edibles that then have added natural terpenes, which kind of, becomes the standard for a lot of industries. You don't add anything, you don't mask anything, which, to many could seem unusual. Why is that flavor literacy so important?
I think it's just like we said before. Most people don't realize weed by itself or cannabis by itself can taste good. Most people just have that experience and memory of like back in the day too. What were they even smoking, right? Like if you're not in California or you're in certain areas of the states, like it's little slim pickings. And
Oh
so
yeah, that's what we had for a long
the
time.
old term was always skunk, right? Oh, it smells like
Yes.
skunk. It smells like skunk in here. And don't get me wrong, I think skunk is an acquired flavor. Like if you drink beer, you're probably like, "Oh, I like this." Like I love skunk, gas, chems. Like that's right down my alley. But for me, I really try to find a lot of more exotic flavors, like different fruits. Some of the strains we work with actually taste like guavas. And when you go and do the research and you break down like what these terpenes are, you'll find that some of these are terpenes that you can actually find in specific fruits. And like you'll find one that is in a guava, and you're like, "Oh, well, now that just backs up what I was saying anecdotally." And I think that's really the reason why we wanted to do these, not mask the flavor of the actual input and highlight it, just because they are good enough to stand alone. And that's not to say that we shouldn't add any flavors to them. We've now recently launched a new SKU, one, the apple pear tahine, which also just won at the MJ Bowl for best edible. And that one we decided, let's add flavor to this, but not to mask it, to complement it. Now we're going to open people's eyes and make that connection. Like you can now mix these. You can take this flavor from the rosin and you can mix it with this, just like if you mix certain fruits to make a smoothie that you enjoy. This is all possible. And understanding, and we're not just talking sweet. There's a lot of different savory dishes that we can do as well when we're looking at like funky flavors and funky notes.
Yeah, I've got a donkey piss strain right now that straight up smells like gherkin pickles, and I love it. Like I absolutely love it. Like that's not typically a selling point for a normal consumer, but I absolutely adore it. I mean, between that name and that smell, you'd think it would be right out the door, but no, it's really working for me.
Yeah, that sounds offensive in a good way.
Exactly. One thing, this is not a question, just kind of a statement to wrap up this section of the pod, and that is that I love that throughout this conversation, not once have we spoken about THC. We've spoken about sensory experience, we've spoken about flavor, we've spoken about communion with the plant, but not once have we mentioned THC. And that's one of the things that kind of we really struggle with here in Australia. You know, it's bang for your buck, it's best value, best price, what's going to get you the most stoned and things like that. So I don't want you to comment on that at all. I just want to say thank you for not mentioning THC. So now, Justin, we're just going to take a little break from the cannabis conversation to have some fun. You know, as we've alluded to already or explicitly spoken about, you did play a character on a show on Arrested Development whose name literally means hello. So it would be irresponsible for me to not do this give and toke rapid fire quiz with hellos from around the world. Now, there's no pressure, just global diplomacy on the line here. All right, let's do this. Annyong is the Korean word for goodbye, thank you, or hello.
It's actually hello and goodbye.
Ooh, you schooled me there. Question 2. Hola with an H is used in which language? Italian, Spanish, or Portuguese?
Spanish.
Number 3. Bonjour most directly translates to good morning / good day, nice to meet you, or how are you?
Oh, I think how are you?
It's good morning / good day.
Denied.
Question 4.
Well, didn't take French.
Which greeting is most commonly used in Japan? Ni hao, annyeong, or konnichiwa?
Konnichiwa.
Which greeting is deeply tied to culture and way of life, not just hello? Is it hi, aloha, or hola?
Aloha.
Ni hao is a greeting in which language? Japanese, Mandarin Chinese, or Vietnamese?
Mandarin Chinese.
Namaste originates from India, Thailand, or Nepal?
I hope this is not a trick question. India.
That is correct. And lucky last, G'day is most closely associated with New Zealand, Australia, or Ireland.
Oh, I feel like I'm supposed to say Australia.
That is correct. Nailed that one, mate. I really put you
I feel
on
like
the
I would have got in trouble if I said New Zealand.
I try not to do too many trick questions, especially when people are giving me their time. So no tricks there, but I definitely put you on the spot. Thank you, Justin, for playing hellos around the world.
That was fun.
There's been a big shift in how younger consumers approach cannabis. I think your story really aligns with that. You know, it wasn't some 19-year-old kid trying to get blazed. It was someone looking at their health and recovery. We're seeing more understanding of inputs, transparency, tech literacy. Do you see this shift happening in real time? Like, is this something that you're noticing in the zeitgeist, in the populace? People are wanting more from their cannabis.
Absolutely. I think there's a shift in our culture right now too. In California, I think they have some data that came out saying that the younger generation was a Gen Z and younger, like they're not as into drinking alcohol. I guess alcohol consumption has significantly reduced and it's at the lowest it's ever been. And you see that in Vegas too, where it used to always be very club and drink oriented, which they still have those, right? But now they're really focusing on food and opening up more restaurants and offering different type of food. And, you know, maybe that's partially to do with cannabis making an impact in the culture. Like it's cannabis is one of those things where it's like, it's not like drinking where if you do too much, you can't go do other things. Like cannabis is that thing where you go like, oh, let's do this, this, and this, but smoke in between when we can.
Yeah, man, where are we going to smoke? Is there an alleyway around here? Yeah. We're seeing a lot of regulatory pressure squeezing farmers. From your perspective in California, what needs to change for craft cannabis to survive?
Oh, man. There's so many things that need to change, not just from a cultivator standpoint. I think the industry itself is overregulated. It's very, very challenging in that sense, but we've got to start somewhere. I'm always going to be a glass half full person. And so I think what can save craft cannabis is, well, there's a couple ways we can go. So if we go decriminalization, right, just fully decriminalize it, like that could work. I think the farms would really like that. They could D2C. But the challenge with that then becomes transparency and how clean is what you're getting and how authentic is it. And, you know, not to say that the COAs and the compliance testing here is perfect, but at least it's something to go off of. And it really puts a lot of the pressure on the consumer then to try to source something well, which is like not everyone can source. And so maybe that's not the answer. And I'm sure a lot of people would hate me for that, but I'm not one way or the other. I'm just going over options. There's a decriminalization route. There's pros and cons to everything, right? And then there's a route of legalization, where if we go full federal legalization, let's just go ahead and do it. I know there's a lot of challenges that come in with that. These big companies and these corporations that are going to buy everything out, take it over, try to control things. But in my opinion, if we're going to try to treat this the way we should treat it, if it's not stigmatized, which is treat it as an agriculture, let us start to sell this in the grocery stores or here and there, and let us start putting labels on it that are organic and regenerative organic. And I think what'll end up happening is similar to what we see now. It's slow, but it's incremental, and like more people now are wary of what eggs they're buying. You could not find any pasture raised eggs anywhere. It was just free range or cage free, then free range, and again loopholes, right? So they had to like go a step up. And then now there's like pasture raised. And then now you got to worry, are they feeding them corn and soy with all this glyphosate? And so now you're DMing brands like, do you feed with corn and soy? And so, but it's a start. And now there's more options available for people like us everywhere. And I think part of that comes back down to, I guess the long way to answer this, awareness. The consumer needs to be aware enough to want to put their dollar where they want to, right? And if you don't want dirty cannabis or you don't want toxic food, well, then you're going to start buying things on the organic section. And if you buy enough, that store, they have to look at their numbers. They're going to stock more of it and stock more of it and stock more of it. And we keep thinking that, oh, I'm just one person, I can't make incremental change. I'll tell you what, my Sprouts across the street, they order more olives, more raw cheese, more raw milk. And I was buying that thing for like 2-3 years. And now it's just stocked.
Hell yeah.
And I know, because I'd go in and just buy it all out. and now it's stocked. And and now it's not just me. Now clearly a lot of people are purchasing it. But I've even experienced that on the small end, right? Like you can go speak with the store manager, be like, I really like this. Are you guys going to bring this back? Like I'd buy this much of it. And a lot of times they will work to restock it, and they just don't know that information. And you know how good it feels for a brand. I know when the buyer calls and they're like, hey, people are really liking this. We have a couple people that really want this, so we want to bring this back in and bring this much of this. And it feels great. And the cool thing about that is, I guess there is some power in us and the people in the community. And really, if we use our resources to dictate what we want, then hopefully we can create change and save craft.
Power to the people and vote with your wallet. I am going to test your optimism with this question, and that is, what do you expect to come from Trump's executive order to reschedule cannabis? There's some optimism there that it will change things. It's also been a month since he signed it and nothing has been said further. So what's your take on that situation?
I'll say something, but I'll start with, I don't know first. Let's just preface with that. And also it's a lot of this is also new, and I'm always wary about drawing conclusions, or it's fun to try to project, to try to guess to see if we're going to be right. But what I've come to see is time will ultimately tell all. And sometimes things that look bad now end up looking good later, and things that look good now end up looking bad later. Time will tell. There's still a lot of time from now to November, and there's a lot of changes that can be made. And so we could say one thing now and they completely change it come November. There's been words about wanting to extend for a couple more years, like the hemp regulation or the hemp sales and things like that. Some might say it's a step in the right direction. I think it's better than nothing. I think if we're going to look at the glass half full, now we can start doing some of these testing and start coming out with real data. Because before, it's like you can't really test these things. And something that I'm keen on is like a lot of these studies on cannabis, I'm not sure what type of cannabis input they're using.
Great point.
Because if you're using, and I almost guarantee they're not using clean cannabis or regeneratively organically grown. And if you're using cannabis that's been riddled with pesticides or certain nutrients that are harmful, it's like, how much of that is that? Because are we going to blame the GMO strawberry for all the ailments it's causing, or are we going to blame the GMO and not the strawberry? Because if the strawberry was clean, maybe we wouldn't be going through that. And so I'm not saying that's the case, but I don't think we've had an opportunity to test it in that manner.
That's right.
And I think we should. And maybe this gives us a chance to test certain things. I guess it's better than being Schedule 1, but Are we happy with where it's scheduled? No. And we all feel like it shouldn't be scheduled at all. But again, maybe we don't know the behind the scenes. It's like maybe we do need money going in to have tests to convince everyone else. Because we're convinced without the tests, but maybe to convince the rest and the masses, like we need some peer review journals going. And at least I do appreciate that the administration has adjusted the way some of these peer-reviewed studies happen, so that I think they're trying to make things, like RFK said something, Junior said something about like trying to make these things more repeatable, experiments more repeatable. Because if you can't make them repeatable, then like how can you prove what you just say it's anything and just like, well, they're not going to repeat the experiment, so just say what we said. And so yeah, I'm hopeful, and we'll see. I will say I didn't expect this administration to drop it down to Schedule 3, and so baby steps.
No, well, very diplomatic and measured take, and I think that's the thing. We see headlines, we want sweeping reforms, but ultimately, the wheels of change are very slow, and let's remain optimistic. I really like that. Justin, our final segment is called Pauls of Wisdom, and though we love the long-form conversation, we try to leave the listener with one key takeaway, dinner party fact, or call to action. So, Justin, what is your Paul of Wisdom?
Wait for things to play out and process over results.
Very nice. Very nice. I think that's great advice for cannabis and for life. Justin, thank you so much for your time today for this conversation. You're doing really amazing work, and I hope to see your stuff in Australia sooner rather than later.
Thanks so much. Really appreciate it, Paul. You're doing amazing things for our culture and community, so thank you.
Here's some money. Go see a Star Wars.
Oh, you know it.
Couldn't help myself.